¿Qué tal? Muy buenos días a todos.
Good morning. Welcome back. And after preparing all the technical part of the coming presentation, we're ready to welcome you to our new edition of Cybercamp 2018. You know that we are on Twitter at INCIBE Cybercamp 2018 and also with our hashtag. Sorry, 18 only, not 2018. And let me introduce you now to Raúl Sanchez, co-founder of Elephant Hacking. He's here to tell us about security in a connected world. I'm sure we will all thoroughly enjoy it, and we will welcome him with a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
Buenos días a todos.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone, and apologies for the slight technical hiccup. Let's start with a little bit of imagination. Can you imagine if we could get into our car without even having a key? Can you imagine if we could drive on the motorway and we don't need to stop and pay? Can you imagine if we could go home and open the door without the need for a key? Can you imagine if we could travel and use public transport without having to physically pay? So let's stop imagining now and let's see the demo of how this can all actually work. That's what we're going to be doing this morning. Although, a word of warning, we need to be ever so careful because we're going to be seeing different situations which are demonstrations. And is this reality? Well, later on you will tell me if it's just a figment of my imagination or if it's reality as it is. This is me, Raúl Sanchez. You can see up on the screen how I'm co-founder of a startup, Elephant Hacking. We haven't been up and running for a long time. I love noughts and ones and hardware analysis, reversing, but mostly I work with hardware. We work at very low level with assembler and C code, well, code writing on C. Then we also help people with higher level activities, but I mostly work with hardware hacking. This is the table of contents that I would like to cover during my workshop this morning. Let's hope we have time to cover it all. It's all going to be very practical activities. We'll start with copying a car key so we can use the car without the need for a key. We won't actually be starting it physically, but if you access the internet, you will see explanations on how that would work. We'll just be using the key to open the door, as it is, not to start the engine. The second activity will be going through the toll booth without paying, for the barrier to lift and let us through the toll booth area without paying. Then how to break into a house without having to break in, just opening the door without the alarms going off, because I don't think alarms are that safe these days, which is why I've prepared this presentation. Sometimes we're told alarm systems are ever so safe. Well, they're not. And you'll see how they're not. The next activity will have to do with hotels, how we could gain control to all the technical devices and possibilities at a hotel. Then we will see ISO 7816, the cards, how they work. And last but not least, we'll see how an NFC card for a public transport voucher or card can be used. A bus pass. And don't misunderstand me. I'm telling you how these cards, these bus passes can be copied, not for you to cheat, but for public transport operators to realize that their system is not that safe. Well, if they want to listen to us who tell them about this. And finally, we will have a nice cup of coffee without having to pay for it, getting coffee at a vending machine, because their systems, again, are not terribly safe. So, how did this all start? Why do I want to do this? I want us to think this is like a journey. I left home a few days ago to come to Cybercamp, staying in Malaga for a number of days, staying at a hotel, and this is not imaginary, right? This is all real. For instance, when I tell you about the hotel card, it will be a real situation. So I left home. I came by car here to Malaga. I didn't steal the car, but I needed a key to open the car door. So again, is that a safe system? Well, we'll see. It's not. Again, to get here, I drove on the motorway. I had to pay for it. But I will show you how barriers can just let me through without having to pay. And because I'm very short of cash, then I thought, well, why not get into a house instead of staying at a hotel, get in, because nobody's in, and gaining access without a very well-known alarm brand stopping me from doing it. Then at the hotel, there's something that's called a master card or a master key that, again, gives access to all their systems. And we'll see how security at a hotel is not as foolproof as we might imagine. And you never know, right? If one of your guests is going to be a clever hacker, or some other guest might come into my room, do whatever he or she feels like doing it or thinks is fun to do. Again, the bus pass. Well, it's a nice idea, right? Having a little tour around Malaga on the bus, catching different buses and using a bus pass that is not real. The machine lets you through, it clicks quite normally. It's quite amazing. And then I just wanted to tell you that at the company we sometimes audit companies. And what I tend to do is launching Nexus first, and because it takes a little while for it all to work, I go for a little walk around the building, around the premises. I go with my gadgets, and I love anything that has to do with industrial equipment. For instance, lighting, domotic lighting control, or heating and air conditioning, if that works through domotics as well, and also vending machines. I've always liked checking and seeing how safe vending machines are, or how, not safe, sorry, how secure their system is, and trying to get a cup of coffee for free. Well, I'll be telling you how it can be done with the idea that hopefully, for instance, the vending machine manufacturers will listen to us and improve their systems. That's the idea. That's why I talk to companies and give them advice, although I must tell you, they rarely listen to the advice I give them. Why not? I guess because there are not many people who are sensitive to these issues, and or they think it's not going to be that harmful. So this is the tour, the little journey I propose to you here today for our workshop. I hope you enjoy the tour. Let's start with the car key. Where's my car key? I don't know what I've done with it. Well, I've got the key, believe me, but I can't see it now. I've got a remote control here as well, so just as well. This is a very simple attack. You just get a car key. Just see how simple it is. Practically anybody can do it as long as you have the correct equipment and systems. So how can you copy a car key? We first need to understand how the key works. All it does is, with an internal algorithm, it sends a unique code to the vehicle. You press your opening button and it sends this unique code to the car. And if it coincides with the individual encoded algorithm, if they coincide, if it's the same, then the door will open. And if it doesn't, it won't. But car controls are peculiar because every time you press the button, it generates a code that's valid for that car. That code gets to the car and the door opens. That's the system. What can we do in this case? We would be very, very close to the remote control, quite close. So we then start to listen and sniff, and when somebody presses the button, the door will open. That's it. Sounds easy, right? Well, it is. But it's a little bit harder because the code is valid first time round and then it's invalidated. It changes. Even if you send the same code again, it won't be valid. The car won't accept it. It won't recognize it. How can we copy the code? You need to have a device in the middle so that the code, when the opening button is pressed, it won't get to the car, it will get to us instead. The car doesn't know that the button has been pressed, but now we've got the code. So the car owner presses the button and they think, oh, that's funny, it didn't open. But it's a man-in-the-middle attack, the usual simple man-in-the-middle attack. All you need to do is be close to the remote control and get the code. Whoops, the screen's not working. The mic is working, right? And another smaller screen's working.
Vaya. Nos han prohibido la charla, ¿o qué pasa?
Is somebody hacking my presentation or what? I thought it was going to be an interesting workshop. I don't know if the technical staff can give me a hand with this. The smaller screens are not working either. Wow.
¿Es de mi salida? No, yo no he sido, yo no he tocado nada. Vale, bueno, como comentaba, lo que hay que hacer es ponerse muy cerca y recibir un código.
So, as I said, a simple system. You stand close to the remote control. You get the valid code and the car doesn't. So the car doesn't know the code has been sent the first time round. It gets it second time round. So we then have to wait for the car owner not to be nearby. That's best, isn't it? And we would then send the code to the car, and the door will open because the car will think it's the proper key sending the code. So shall we see this for real? I couldn't get a car into the room, unfortunately, but I've brought something that will work in a similar way. Let me try and find the battery. I brought a doorbell.
Vaya, qué fallo. Menos mal, está aquí. He traído un timbre para hacer esta práctica.
Here's my doorbell for our clever practical example. A wireless doorbell that you can buy at any old Poundland shop. Can you hear? I press my remote control and the doorbell sounds. So let me change to the other screen now. I don't know if anybody here knows very much how radio frequency spectrum works. The RF range. This is SDR. Well, it's a little bit more powerful than the usual smaller versions. This is a TDT USB that has been modified so that, because TDT is UHF mode, it allows you to sniff a little bit beyond the band, the UHF band. In this case, I've brought one from 2 to 6 megahertz. From 2 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. Originally, I thought it was 443 megahertz. Look at this. I press the control. I'm on the right band, but nothing much is happening. Why? Because I bought it at a cheap shop, like a Poundland, and I thought, why is this not working? I was a little bit confused. And funnily enough, these cheap bazaars tend to sell Chinese manufactured equipment, which the transmission in that case, they use the Chinese frequency, not the European one, which is 330. Let me change that then. See if that works. It needs to be at 330. 330. There it is. Can you see it? Look at the graph. Oh dear, it's taking a little bit longer than it should. I hope the battery doesn't give up on me. Right, 336. You see? It's working. When I press the remote control, it's not very, very stable. I'm not going to say it again. Well, in fact, this cheap shop where I bought this remote control was run by a Chinese family, and I have nothing against China or the Chinese people, but they're not always very reliable. Why is this working? God knows. I mean, it might just be sheer luck. So we're lucky it's working. That's something. So it's at 332 now. Ooh, but it's quite fragile. It's not very stable. Right, it's round about 332 then. We've got that now. Oh, I forgot to explain this little program to you. How it works. What it does is sniffing on a number of different bands, because the electromagnetic range has different bands. We can then change the frequency thanks to this program, the modulation, a number of different things. But in this particular example, we don't care about that. We just need to copy and reproduce the signal. Let's do that then.
Con una utilidad del proyecto LibreSmoke.
I've got this utility from the MoCom Books project. It's a transfer one. And it gives us all different options. -R allows to receive data. With -T, we transmit or broadcast data. Then we can add modulation and gain, because, gain will be important because the battery is a bit low, with -F for frequency. So -R for receiving. That's what we'll do to start off with. I'm just going to check. The next step is adding the frequency. I forgot what it was. 446, was it? 300. Oh, thank you. It was 336. Sorry, I've got a rubbish memory. All I want to show you is how it can reproduce. You can copy. But this is not the most interesting step. Not yet. 333, was it? Point something. Is that the one? 333.35. Because it goes up and down, it varies. It's not very stable. Let's hope it works first time round. This is the command, -R for receiving data, you see. What it does, the program saves it on a route file. If this were music, it would be like WAPs, saving noughts and ones, anything it gets, without zipping it. And then we'll have to do -T, but we're on -R now. We now add the frequency, it's saving it. I now press the button, I stop, and if it works, the bell is here. You see, bell 1. How much does that take? It's got 90 megas. Yeah, that's the size. 90 megas in just 3 seconds. That's pretty good going. So without touching the control, I'm now going to try and broadcast the same signal. We go to hack RF. We look at the parameters. -T is for broadcasting. So that's the one. We press -T. We transfer the file, bell, and then we add the gain on dBs. What is that going to be? 20 dBs? 20 decibels? And if the frequency was correct, when I press, it will reproduce, it will play, it will ring. Does it? No, it doesn't. Why? Because the frequency varies, is not very stable. But if I get the exact right frequency, let me just try that again. Here, right in the middle of the curve so that I get the best average accurate frequency, 336.45. Now, you see, it's changed because it was 0.3 earlier on. Again, it's a very unstable frequency for this particular doorbell. So 336.45 we said. Let me try that again. 333. Right. So I save the bell and then I press play with 333.50 with a gain of 20 dBs. There you go. I didn't even have to press the button. I didn't cheat. The control is here and is ringing. Right, that was a very simple task. We're going to do something more complex next. Basically, it's the same idea, but in this case, the frequency is going to be for a car. Let's hope it works. This is a remote control car, a little toy car. I'm going to leave it on the floor because otherwise I might drop it. I'm going to find the frequency for the accelerator, see the composition of the frequency so that we can then generate it from scratch without reproducing it as we did earlier, but rather through modulation of the signal coming out of the control, modulated with the frequency transmitter. That's what we'll try and do next. I don't know if you're familiar with the Osmocom project. It's called Pen Source GNU Radio. GNU Radio, sorry.
Aquí está. Bien, pues aquí tenemos, es de manera visual, lo vamos a hacer.
Right, I'm going to do this so you can see it up on the screen visually, generating the signal, checking the modulation so that we can then generate it again with all necessary functions, everything we need for the signal to be generated from scratch, as I said. I'm going to turn the car off first, because otherwise it's just going to go mad. So, what should we do first? Are you familiar with radio frequency, with all the details? It's not that complex. Well, it is a little bit at the beginning until you understand everything that has to do with modulation. You understand how signals are made up through different very basic functions. Some of them terribly complex. All of that is done on Python, by the way. So you could even prepare your own modules. They're all plugins. So if you want to work with your own module, you can prepare it yourself. But it's not really required. Most modulations you can get as a plugin, unless you come across a particular situation which doesn't comply with the normal standards, or where you want to have, imagine, your own unique transmission or broadcast that nobody would be able to sniff. In that situation, then you might want to make your own, which is not simple, but it can be done. For instance, in the military, there are modulations that are normal for them, but complete unknowns for anybody else. Well, you could even crack those with something like this.
Cogemos el mando a distancia, no lo he hecho antes.
So, we get the remote control, we check the frequency for that transmission, the aerial is getting the signal from the remote control. We press forward. It's not 336 or 400 megahertz, because 333, I forgot to mention that it's the American standard, which is the one that they use in China as well, not in Europe. So this would be a legal bell for the US and China, but not for Europe. But in this case, there's another free frequency, 27 megahertz. There's quite a bit of noise there. So 27, there it is. So we're already receiving something. What is it? Is noise. So it's not going to be very clean. I don't know if it's going to work very well. I don't know if there will be something transmitting on this frequency, because you don't need a license to broadcast or transmit on this license. It's open and free. Look at that huge peak there at 27.3 on that band. 27 point what? 035. Look at it. See those frequencies there? See how we have that horizontal line? That would equate to 0. That would be our 0. And what else? We've got those tiny waves oscillating, stopping, going up and down. Those wavelets. That's an AM type modulation. The sinusoidal wave stretches and then goes narrower again. Why? Because we first have 0 without any oscillation. Then 1 would mean a tiny pulse of 2 tiny sinusoidal wavelets. And then depending on the width of the pulse, that would mean it's 0 or 1. It depends on the width, I insist, of the pulse. If it's a very small pulse, that would equate to 1. Oops, sorry, the speaker corrects himself. If it's tiny, it would be a 0. If it's wider, it would equate to 1. So, how can we generate those larger and smaller pulses? So, we said 27.035. Don't let me forget that. I'm just going to write it down or type it here, because otherwise I'll forget. So we will now be generating larger or smaller pulses for noughts or ones, depending on the remote control. For instance, it might be 110. No, you'll see what I mean in a minute. On the left, not 1, for instance. On the right, whatever it says. And what does that do? Well, sending 4 different commands through an analog means, which is radio frequency. So let's first check what pulses this remote control actually broadcasts or transmits. We first need to find the block Osmocom source. What does that block do? Connect up to my radio frequency reader. The driver is ready so that through the USB port, communication is possible then with the radio frequency transmitter TXRX. What does that mean? That smaller ones that would cost you 10 euros can't transmit. They would only receive. In this case, it can both transmit or broadcast and receive. But if we have an SDR USB, the typical one for TDT devices, we could do the first part of this exercise, but we wouldn't be able to transmit the code, sending the command to the car so that the car would start, as if by magic. We wouldn't be able to do that second part. So what do we do first? we first need to enter the number of pulses divided, pulses per million that I get from that signal, an analog signal.
Which is endless. It's actually as many spots or points as the accuracy of our device in order to measure those pulses. So an analog signal would oscillate, a sine wave moves from a 0 and it keeps oscillating all the way back to 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 to, whenever we are tired of measuring or as high as our device can measure, and then back to 0. And that number of pulses that we have from the first 0 to the second 0, that number of pulses is what we can set here. We will say 20 million pulses per second. 20 million times within a second, I'll measure that sine wave. So from the first 0 to the second 0, I'll measure the wave 20 million times per second. So I will be sampling at a rate of 20 million times per second. That's what I meant to say. It's a sampling. It seems quite high, but some are as high as 100 million or a very steep resolution. Ours works great at 20 million and is more than enough, especially for what we have here is more than enough. We don't need a higher resolution. All right, so it's 2 to the 6th power. I said 20 million. So we have a variable. Here we have this central frequency. That's our frequency, that's a variable. Which we would name central frequency. That's the reference for our remote that we will be recording or saving. This is 273.56.98. I copy that. So it's better than learning it by heart, so we better copy paste it. So it's 27 megahertz. So 27 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 27 million 098. That's the central frequency. That's what will be reading, not writing, but reading. What will be sent by this remote. So what we do next is try and find the module here. This is FFT tester. And it shows right away what is being read by our reader, RF reader. It shows on the screen if it is where an oscilloscope, and it shows us a graph that's been sampled. And that's what's important here. And we all need to understand that it's 2 million. As I said before, resolution is 2 million pulses, samples per second. So in a minute, and we will see it moving fast, but at least we can see it. We can even freeze it to see how it is transmitting. And we'll see that as well. What we do here with this module is a spectral analysis. So we look into the range or the spectrum in the frequency we've stated, which is 27 megahertz, to see our remote. All right. As I said before, we need a reference frequency, which we've said is center. All right. So this is our base frequency. Our sample frequency already done it, so that's it. So we take our input, that is RF, and this is our spectral analyzer. And just like that, so if we press play Oh, I saved it. Same as before, but now with our frequency, which is 27 megahertz. So if I press it here, oh, all right. So you cannot see. Did I get the right one? Yeah, I did. So 27,035,698. All right. Just like that. That's the frequency as it moves. But let's handle it now and let's change it. And we'll see a few more parameters. This was the central frequency. Let's try and see how we can add the pulse modulation. Using our own module, here it is. All right. This is our sampling frequency. So what we do is plug this onto this or link this to, and we have some extra information. So we have both in parallel. So this is an output here, and right here we have the output underneath. I don't know whether it's the batteries or what, but there's something wrong here. Oops. I guess it'll work now. Well, just like that, for the first half of it, we would get our reference frequency. And what we do next is save it on our drive with the new module that I'll add, which is this one here. So let's name it, I don't know, remote speed up. Well, this is not compatible because we need to translate it into float. All right. Okay. So what we do here is when we turn this signal, that is a complex signal, into float, as you probably know, a complex signal has a mixture of frequencies, so we rule out or discard what's the imaginary side of it, so we only leave the output. We forget about everything else. Okay.
Mal va la cosa, que no recibe. Ahora, este sí. 27035. Sí, es lo que hemos puesto, yo creo.
Yeah, that's what we had written, right? 2735. 27035. Well, it does work. Oh, again, we forgot about that. Okay, maybe we were not getting the right gain here. No, it's not working. As an emergency kit, I always get... So when I recorded it, when I saved it, that was yesterday that I was checking it out. The frequency was 27314. I don't know what the difference might be. Let's try the one that I saved yesterday and see if it works. Oh, it does work. 27314. So let's use the one that I recorded yesterday because for whatever the reason... All right. So here what we have is, well, you can see it now, can't you? So here, we have the wave coming in, but we'll see what kind of a wave it is. That's what we've seen before. This is a wave. So what's here? This is interesting. So this is a white pulse, another white pulse, a smaller pulse. Another one that is small. So if we think that the white pulse is the first one, which is a sync by the AM modulation that we're seeing, so this is the white pulse, it is 1, 2, 3, and this is the fourth one. So we have 4 as a synchronism, and then the smaller ones that are narrower ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, not all of them, but at least 10. Because I've counted those before. Let's check it out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 white pulses, and we have 10 that are narrow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. And that command, 4 white pulses and 10 narrow commands, that's the acceleration one. And let's use the break-in command so that you see it's different. So I press and stop. So these are all narrow. There's no wide pulse. So we have 10 narrow pulses, or as many as we want to send. We can have one and a loop, or we want this one to be narrow because break-in has no synchronism frequency. So let's check the left side. Here are some of them. Left side we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 3 that are white, and I don't know how many that are narrow. So here you see how we send the signal through an analog system, and this is digital. So this can be a white pulse, and we as a reference take a 1, and for a narrow pulse a 0. Just came up with a code, and here it will be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, and that's the number of narrow pulses that we have. So what about the right side? And that way we see the whole, all of the commands there. So right side would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and a number of narrow pulses. That's the left one. We try to focus on accelerate because maybe on the right side it will crack, so accelerating. So let's go through it again and let's repeat the test again. Stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's for accelerating, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 narrow pulses. So 4 and 3. So we closed it. So what do we do next? Now that we've seen how it is sending. So save it on the drive, save it on the WAP system, and I'll explain how we can edit it. So let's name it. Let's save it here, for example.
Acelera.
Accelerate or speed up. So come here and let's press play. And so I saved it here. I stop, close, and we should have a file that is accelerate.wap. So we open it with an editor. So see, we are using here a music editor, Audacity. Have you heard of it? Which is a music editor where we can mix and cut and process the music files. Why do we use this? That is actually a music processing app. Well, it works as a song. So what we are recording is just samples. The songs, as you know, is so WAP is 24 to 100. So we've saved a 2 million. So it's just the same processing as with the music file. If we keep increasing it, what do we find? It looks like what we've just seen, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 white pulses, and 1, 2, 3 up to 10 narrow pulses, and this is repeated through time. So I got the wrong one. Well, doesn't matter. So we have wave here, waves that are sine waves that are small, very small, and here we're zooming in, and since they are so close together, this is described as a 1. When it is sent, well, when nothing is sent, is a 0. If lots and lots and lots of waves, another 1. So it is modulation, which is AM modulation, analog modulation in width. And now that we've saved it, we can record the signal, we can save the signal, and remove this. I will not do it from scratch, because it would take us a little while and we would be short of time. But same as before, this is the output from our remote, and same as before, from the input of our remote all the way to the output, which here is same device. So we are bridging from the input to the output from our SDR there. And so next, what we do not do is plug the output right away, but we process the signal from the minute it goes into the receiver till, well, so what we've processed here is an oscilloscope, so until it goes there, reaches there. Why do we need it? Well, we need to see it is a stable frequency, no noise here. Let's see. All right.
Ahí está. Vale, tenemos nuestra frecuencia estabilizada y cuando doy al mando.
So No, it's stable. I press. Something's going on. All right. So what do we have here? So we have pulses, ones and zeros. What we get here is our previous sequence with ones and zeros. Here what we've done is, as a reference, we've taken time from the transmission of a one. Sorry, this was a zero. So from the beginning of the sending, and then the time when the sending of the one starts, and then it ends. So we are saving the time, and we have it here. So we have time that it takes to send a one, so that we have a frequency. Or a square band. This is a square band, same time as it takes us to have our reference frequency from the radio remote. Let me expedite it, because otherwise we run out of time. So what's next? Next we need to do this, and we have the time, right? So we get our frequency. Our code. 1, 1, 1, 1. So 4 ones and 10 zeros. So that's the code we get. So we add a vector. Let's magnify it so that I can see it. This is our vector, and so what we do next is, so this is a previous frequency. So you can see, right? So what we do here is 3 ones. This is the white pulse, then a 0. We stop transmitting, then 3 more ones, another white one, and then 0, and then 4 times over. So we have 4 pulses that are synchronism, sent by the remote in accelerating, and then 10 small pulses, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. That's a vector. We combine it with a sine signal as a reference that we've produced, which is just a regular sine wave as a reference, and then we combine it with a vector, and we got it here on screen. So this is what's been recorded or saved on the drive. And we see that we had our frequency, and there we had this, plus this. This is the peak where we are working and transmitting. This is the code that we produced next, and so we press, we click it on transmit, and here all right. So what's here? So this is the signal produced by ourselves without touching the remote. This has been produced by ourselves with the vector that we added. It's ones and zeros. And so what do you have there? There is no noise, right? Why is there no noise? Because it's being produced by our SDR and it's not going on air. It is just inside our generator. It's not out on the air. So we are producing 4 wide and 10 narrow pulses. So that goes on air. First, let's save it on the disk, on the drive, and we test the signal. Accelerate 1, that's what we've produced. Press, cut, and then on the drive. This is what we had, and then we have the bottom signal. So we want 1, 2, 3, 4 wide pulses and 10 that are narrow, similar to what we had before. So if we start cutting, I don't know how many seconds. So if we cut this somewhere around here, and then we cut a chunk out of here, there you see that the source signal, original signal, looks very much like what we've just done. We see the times are matched, and with it, there's no noise. As I said, everything you can see here, with every pulse is noise in the air which cannot be avoided. What we have, we produced ourselves, so it is clear. So what do we do next? We have this with our SDR up on the air. All right. Same here, but we just get the signal, and what we're doing is we're sending on air. And I think now, yes, it should start. This is the signal in transmission. So we see that, and if we come closer, here should move. And as it's happening, why do we need to come that close? People might think, well, it's little range, right? But that's right, that's because the gain is slow. If we add a larger gain and we play and we click on play, I come closer, and the range should be increased, and with gain it goes up. This depends on the antenna and everything. 120. So I figured now it'll go further. So it's 27 megahertz. There's noise, ambient noise, and the batteries and everything, but that was it. From 0 we can produce, I think it's enough. We're past our playing age, but from 0, using Genius Radio, we've produced a signal. Here you have it, that was zeros and ones, that we got from this remote, and so that's what I wanted you to understand. It understands the signal and sends zeros and ones as a specific command for these. Important thing here is, okay, this is where we were coming from. So we got a signal from any given car, and we've transmitted it, and we've opened it. We copy-pasted it, so we've copied it and reproduced it. It is a simple attack, a play attack, and so we've produced our own signal with our own command. What for? In case we have that sequence of the vehicle. We know how the codes are produced, and we can have a code generator, and so there's no need to come that close to capture the signal from someone. No need to be there. We have a signal generator, and we stay next to it, and it's as simple as that. That's what I wanted you to understand. How can this be avoided? That's what this is all about. How? No way to circumvent it, avoid it, prevent it, no way whatsoever. Only thing is, when we press the remote and it's not opening, we need to move away because someone just copied our signal. If it's a shopping center and we leave the car there, when we come back, maybe we don't have our stuff in there. It cannot be avoided. Cannot be avoided. It needs to come from the manufacturer. The manufacturer needs to add an extra coating or a different code, but that will not allow for a code to stay valid after some time. This is up to the manufacturer. So let's skip on. So the electronic toll system. How does it work? I guess we've all used the electronic road toll system. An electronic toll, they're all the same. I've never seen anyone that is different, standardized. It's usually an RFID tag. This one is semi-active. What does it mean? I don't know if you know about passive tags, but it would be a chip with an antenna, no battery whatsoever, but the radio frequency itself, there's an antenna sending on that radio frequency, and there, with the electromagnetic waves it sends, manages to activate the chip, and the chip in turn, with the radio frequency it received, can have a single identifier sent to the antenna, to the transmitter. That's a passive tag. What does a semi-active or semi-passive tag do? Depends on what we want to call it and how we want to use it. It doesn't wait. So there's a battery, and it's no need to, since the signal coming in is very weak, it doesn't need to use the radio frequency from what's been received, but itself, it's using the received radio frequency from the antenna to say to the battery, okay, turn on and feed me so that I can send my signal and my ID.
What does the semi-active tag do? It doesn't use the energy that receives to transmit, but rather to activate the battery and then transmit the ID at a longer distance. For instance, with 2.4 gigahertz, we would be able to transmit on a range of 300 meters. That's what we need. Whereas in the longer tags, the shorter tags, it would be 11 meters. There are different distances depending on the frequency that we're using for transmitting. In this case, for electronic road toll systems, they're semi-active and they transmit at 2.4. So, when we go through the toll booth, what do we see? There is an antenna, an aerial, transmitting a signal to our tag in our car, and then our tag system transmits the client ID that we've been allocated, and what the server gets in the road toll system is an ID of who is going through the booth, so that we can then be charged every month. So what needs to happen for the barrier to lift without having to pay for it? It's ever so peculiar, and it's fun. I find it fun. I just have fun with it. What did I prepare here? Well, it's an antenna, an aerial in a car. Here is the picture, and this is a real-life situation where the system is ready and working in the car. The aerial is simulating like it's the one in the road toll system, as if it were the server. So we're driving normally, And we're capturing all the IDs of all vehicles that have the rotor system, electronic rotor system working. Let's imagine that we capture 30 of them. Well, the idea is that we can take it in turns, use different IDs on different days, so that different people will find there's an extra charge at the end of the month. Will they notice? Well, we don't know, do we? Am I encouraging you to do this in real life? I'm not. And how can this be avoided? Well, how can we stop this capture from happening? Well, by having a Faraday box protecting us. In this case, yes, as I said, it's only a Faraday box protecting the system in our car to make sure that nobody is nasty. We're not nasty, right? But there might be nasty people there, cheeky people who will use the motorway for free and will be paying for it. We don't do that because we're nice. So let's check what a tag system needs to work. And as I said, this is not a hypothetical situation. I did this in real life. You will see in a minute. This is what it looks like. All these numbers, different digits, and it comes by default this long list of digits for the tag. So, because our company works with software development, one of the things that we've prepared is a programmable chip so that the code can go in any position we like. So, as I said, we would go for a little ride in our car, capture a number of IDs, a few of them, and then change the ID in the right position so that with a switch, we would just activate our transmitter for the electronic rotor system. The antenna would receive it. And we would go through as if we were somebody else, some other car. When we go through the toll booth, the system would be activated and the area would think that, as I said, we're driving some other car. That's the way to use the motorway for free, pretending we're somebody else. How can you avoid that? Well, by isolating it with the Faraday box. The cage, sorry, Faraday cage. Right, I'm running out of time, so let's keep moving. Let's now check how alarm systems work at home. I bought an alarm from one of these Poundlands, our old Chinese run shop. They tend to be not great, but still. I bought a well-known brand. I got the code from the alarm system when you arm and disarm the alarm. This is a very basic capture technique on FM because it's a very simple system. It has to be something cheap. What we saw, for instance, in the remote control toy car, that was more of a simple system. In the case of the residential alarm, is a little bit more complex. So let's see how we can crack that code and we can cheat again. Well, it's very similar technique. Here we have the client, in this case, the homeowner, who would activate the alarm when leaving home the alarm is activated, you arm it, you leave your home and you think it's safe. What would we do then? Well, we would be close by. We would then capture the code. The homeowner had to transmit to arm the alarm. And then we would also be nearby when the homeowner comes back home to capture the code to disarm or deactivate the alarm. Again, this was a well-known brand for this alarm system. And in fact, we found that the code is identical both for arming and disarming. Can you imagine how terribly unsafe that is? Normally, car alarms are safer, I found, than alarms for homes. It's a little bit pathetic, right? Using the same code both for activating and deactivating the alarm. That's a message for my presentation. Never use wireless alarms. It's much better if they're wired, because with the wireless system, you have quite a high probability that the code will be less secure. So as I said, you would use the code and you would be able to gain access as if you were the homeowner. Let's see how it works. We're not going to be working with GNU radio in this case, the radio GNU. Here it is. I'll be using the same program we saw earlier to capture the frequency. Let's see what it is.
A ver. Sí, ahí tenemos el botón A.
Here it is. Button A and button B. What are we doing now?
Pues con esto vemos que yo doy al botón A, que es...
See how it works. I press button A for arming. This is button A for arming. Now I'm going to press button B. Whoops. Here we have it. Button A, button B for arming and disarming. I just wanted you to see that. So let's check what frequency is the right one for transmission for this control. If it were a European frequency, it would be 443 megahertz. Well, that's an approximation. Let's press button A. There we have it. Let's double check what the exact frequency is. In this case, it's 434,997. I'm going to copy paste it. 432,997. There it is. And now we're going to copy. First thing we need to do is recording on the hard drive R button A. How do we need to do that? In this case, we need to be more accurate, more precise. We're transmitting on a different modulation, so we're going to be using the open source Osmocom project, which tends to work much better than the one I showed you earlier. Here it is, -F for the frequency, minus G for the gain, and minus R for recording. Good. Here it is. We need to do the sampler for 8 million. What do we need to enter now? Minus F for 32.997. Right. The frequency I got just now. Right. Good. This is similar to what we had earlier on. I need to press the button. And here, A433. Right. So I now need to name the file. Button A. I press record. And I stop it. It's exactly the same as we saw earlier on. In this case, this command has worked how? We stood near the home, we pressed the record button, we waited for the homeowner to leave, and we have captured that as button A. Let's see what the file contains. Where did I save that? I think it was here. I hope you can see that. Can you see this here? The print is a little bit small. Well, I can see here some little marks like stains. Some of them are wider, some of them are narrower. What does that mean? Well, as we said earlier, the narrower ones equate to 0, and the larger or wider ones are sine waves that would equate to 1. So that would equate to noughts and ones making up the code so that the control can transmit that code. Right. We can do this manually, but this is very helpful. It's very visual. You see? 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and so on. That is generating that sequence is, well, I need to copy it, by the way. You see, 0, 0, 1, well, and so on. I've copied it. I don't want to waste time. So we generate that code with noughts and ones. And what do we need to do next? Just as I showed you earlier, we need to then analyze the width of the pose. Although in this case I'm using this more visual system, I find it a lot more convenient, to be honest. You see, there it is. I'm going to explain you how it works, but in fact I cheated a little bit. This is one I prepared earlier. We've got there 25 poses in all. And look how it's synchronized perfectly well. This is not like the remote control that I showed you that I bought from the Chinese shop where it was It varied quite a bit. In this case, is much better synchronized. You see, the pose starts, then it comes down, another one starts, it comes down. And from this line to the next, that would equate to a full sine wave. So from this line to that one, that means the sine wave goes through 0. Because a sine wave always starts at 0, it goes up to 1, 2, 3, whatever, then it comes down, back to 0, before it goes back up again. In this case, we see the pose, very tiny pose within the sine wave. So it's not even a whole sine wave. This is more or less half of one. This is a narrow pose coming down to 0, then going back up again, another narrow pose. And look at that third one, it almost fills up completely the sine wave. So we have separated those narrower poses from the wider poses. The narrower poses tend to be round about half of a longer pose, which is very helpful because the server for the alarm can tell whether it's a 0 or a 1, well, and so can we. So you can read the information, because that's what we're doing, right? We are just transmitting noughts and ones, in this case not digitally, but through an analog channel. It's a frequency algorithm, that range. So I don't want to copy it because in fact we can do this manually. You see, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1. Right, so I could do that manually, type it in, but I'm not going to do that. This is a very clever tool. Here it is. So, as I said, this is very clever. Well, I'm saying it's clever. We'll have to wait and see if it works. I'm just going to enlarge. I want. Can you see that letter size from the back? Well, there we have it. We have that number. What does that say? Minus, 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 minus all of those numbers. Minus 9, minus 9, minus 6, minus 6. What does that mean? That's width. Minus 6, well, sorry, a wide one, a wide pose, a narrow pose. That's what it's saying. Meaning this is a 0 or this is a 1. That's the message. Well, I have here the one I prepared earlier. So, as I said, this is one I prepared earlier. So this is where I have the value for A. So I don't need to copy paste it. So again, as we did earlier, we've got it ready. Now what can we do with it? We make sure the sequence has no gaps in between the digits. We copy that sequence then of digits, and then I get my Arduino. How much does this cost? Well, about 10 euros, that's all. I have a radio frequency transmitter. I bought this one at a Chinese shop, by the way. How much does this cost? Well, about 5 euros, that's all. So, it's a very simple system, right? A very simple device. Another one which is a little bit more complex, but still it's analog, right? So just that very small investment plus a little wire simulating an alarm system that costs hundreds of euros to gain access to a home that might cost hundreds of thousands of euros. Let's see if it works. We connect the Arduino. Let's cross our fingers so it works first time round. The reason I wanted to show you this is that we have those two different ways to record a signal. The first exercise recorded the doorbell signal, saving it, recording it, and then reproducing it, playing it again without having the command. Then the remote control to a car. We started there from scratch, generated the signal from scratch with pulses, with modulation, whereas this time I used a more visual tool, like so, getting then the code for the alarm, because we were standing nearby. We then modulated so we could see the code, or codes, to arm and disarm the alarm, and then we broadcast it, we transmit it thanks to the Arduino. So this is the code I copied. We now paste it for our magic Arduino to work. Let's hope when I press it works. So we program the Arduino with the disarm code. I don't know if you can hear it. I can. Oh, hang on, there's an error mode because there's another one here. I didn't get the right one. Oh, the port was wrong. This is the right one. So, for those of you at the back of the room, you won't hear it, but it's transmitting. I can hear it. Let me show you the demo now. I now connect the Arduino. Oh dear, it's not working. I wonder what happened there. It's getting to where it needs to go. I can hear it. Ah, right, because it's 15,200. This is live or direct. USB, was it 0 here? 9600. Well, I'm just setting it because earlier on it was using the wrong port. I still use, I might be old-fashioned, but I still use a serial port for my communications. So you will see it's USB here, but in fact the serial port is still quite common because it can cope with much larger speeds. Call me nostalgic, but I communicate with my Arduino at 9600. That's what I'm like. Let's hope it works now. Oh dear, it doesn't. Again, apologies, because only people who are right at the front of the room will be able to hear how this is working. The relays are being activated. Here is not connecting up properly. No idea why. Apologies. But the helix wave, I actually made this system by myself with a screwdriver. You just measure the length. You need to measure the wavelength at 400 megahertz. I can't remember how many centimeters that equates to. And for the width is the same idea. So just for 10 euros plus my Arduino, I could gain access to a home with an alarm. You'll just have to take my word for it. How could you avoid somebody doing something like this? Well, having an alarm which is not wireless, which is also not a very well-known brand, so that people can't copy the code. And what kind of alarm would that be? Well, definitely wired, not wireless system. Your sensors should be wired, not wireless. Because I forgot to tell you a story earlier on. I had to buy an alarm for me to learn how to do this, and the most popular brand in our country, that's the one I bought. And I found that the communication between the sensors and the server, their main station, that communication is not safe. They say it is, but it's not. So, apart from copying the remote control from the alarm, you can also actually cheat the system. For instance, if it didn't work with a remote control, if it worked with a keypad, well, even then we could gain access by telling the alarm system one particular sensor is not detecting anything. We would be standing next to it, and we would be able to cheat the whole system at the company's headquarters for detection not to work. So it's quite scary, right? How terribly insecure this all is. No security whatsoever. So let me move on to the next exercise. Remember, this is a key to a hotel room. A key card. Right, this is going to be a simulation. And I'm not encouraging you to do anything like this, but I'm just going to show you how it could be done. How does a key card work at a hotel? In this case, the card has a chip. Have you seen many hotels with a key like this? I haven't. Not many hotels have a key card like this. It's quite an unusual one. But in fact, it's quite a safe system if they use it right. The standard, in this case, the ISO standard is 7816 with a protocol that uses an EPROM memory. How does this work? Well, it has a memory bank protected by a password. So we can read the memory bank, but we still need a password. And why is this keycard different or peculiar? Well, because we can read it, we can see the code, we can see the ID for that keycard, plus any other information that the manufacturer or the hotel reception has added with that 6-digit password. What happens is that when you enter your password wrong 3 times, the key card self-destroys. Imagine that. What does that mean? That there are fuses, physical fuses, so that when you enter the password wrong 3 times, there is a high voltage, like a surge, right? 5-6 volts, something like that, and the card is physically invalid because it burns, basically. So it's a very safe card, right? Can you imagine how hard it is for you to guess a 6-digit PIN number? I mean, you might get lucky one day. I've broken lots of cards like that. I ended up ruining them many, many times because it's very hard guessing a code like that.
So what did we come up with? So this is the card, the inside. This is an EPROM card, as I said. It has a memory bank that is 1024 bytes. It's a small one. Some others are 2048, some others are 4096, depending on the one we want to buy. But in order to store a hotel room number, we don't need much information. So you see the first 6 bytes in our bank, memory bank, match a single ID. Usually that's the manufacturer. Those 6 bytes cannot be modified. We cannot save anything on top of them. On paper, every manufacturer would have 6 digits allocated. Same as with computers. There are some numbers from X number to Z number, and there's a serial production of cards and can only use those numbers allocated to them by the authority in charge of regulating it all. And we are allowed to write from the 6th byte onwards, so 06. 00 was the beginning, and from 07 onwards we can write as much as we want. But in order to write, we need a PIN number. We can read even the ID, no problem there, that we've allocated to the card, and we can just write if we know what the PIN number is. There's no other writing method. Only by knowing the PIN we'll be able to write. This is a real card from the hotel. No names given here, but, well, any given hotel. What was recorded in it? There was an ID, naturally as with any other card, and 3 bytes, only 3 bytes here. If you know how to translate hexadecimal to decimal system, it's quite simple and straightforward here. It was 00065, which would be room 101 in decimal system. So not too hard, right? Not even an error control or anything of the kind. No encryption, nothing. So directly it was 101. Why is that? Well, they know why. The ones who did it, they know that. They trusted the security and the protection given by the PIN number, that is a 6-digit, and also the self-destruction of the card. Technology is good. Yes, it's old. Yeah, very old. This is from the 90s, and I'll explain the story on how it all started and how I actually started looking into this protocol and this card. I'll explain the anecdote, but please let me finish what's inside. Room 102, just the same, hexadecimal to decimal. Just a simple conversion, but not too difficult, right? And in this hotel, the master key, someone would guess what the code was. 0000. The empty card is filled with 1s, so here for the master key, 0000. And as I say, this is real life. I got the card. Don't ask me how. But I managed to read it, and I guessed the code for it. Not very difficult. It is just common sense, right? You see 1, 2, 3 cards, you just try it out, and easily you find a combination to open any given door. All right. So how does the story begin? Because before I move on, I'd like to share the story with you. As I said, I grow old, and in the 90s, I was already thinking it through. And there's this friend who comes and says, you know, there is a video club or a video store. You remember what they were like? You don't know what a video store is, but I see young people in the audience. But in the past, we had a video shop or a video store. They would have a sticker with the barcode, and they would read your barcode. That was your ID as a client, and they would charge you whatever, and you could rent anything. And then some 20 years ago, time flies, right? But they got up to date and started using a card just like this with a chip in it, same as I said before with the hotel. And a friend comes and says, there is this chip card at a video store. Well, now it's different. I will know. How can you not? Okay, you of course need to look into it. And sure, I just screw the card, and just 3 attempts and it was ruined. Was the real, no more written. 3 attempts. I looked into the protocol and the standard, and it is true. Philips, the one that came up with this kind of card, included self-destruction option. So asked for another card, got another one, and I said, okay, this one I need to keep it. It's been 2, and I don't 2 times, so not a 3rd time. So what did I come up with back in the day to guess the code? It took me some time, lots of time. Loads of working hours, but what did I invent? Well, what did I come up with? I decided to have a card. This one, okay, you cannot. Well, what did I do? A physical card. We don't have any. It's not a plastic card, but a physical card instead. Just one like that. I studied electronics for 5 years, in case you didn't know. Apart from computer science, I am familiar with electronics. And I built a physical card for myself, just like this one. Same size, and the length was a bit larger, and I would get wires or threads, something like this. What would I do? I would plug the connector, the pins inside the machine. I would get them out to my card that I had built myself in order to weld some wires and see what the machine was reading. Physical card that you had to enter or swipe through the reader. And back then, well, laptops were nothing like today's. A wire to the car, and well, lots of inventions in between. But like that, I got to get the physical pins of the machine inside of a board that I produced myself, and I entered my original card into my machine. So what did I do? I put it right in between. So this has been done at a hotel, because this was my Cybercamp trip, true, but it all started further ago when there still were video shops or stores. So I had that card, I wired my card all the way to the real card, this one here. I placed myself in between to see what was being sent. What did I manage to see? Well, the pin on the card, and well, I had several cards, but the same pin over and over. So funny, isn't it? And I saw what was transmitted through the card to the machines. Always same pins, always the same. Well, so just using readers like this one, this is a bit more modern. This is a parallel port, but this is very modern. This we didn't have before. Then the serial port. If you remember back when we had the Via Digital and other readers that are used for this kind of readers, but this is from before that. Channel Plus. I was familiar with the cards, but it comes from earlier than that. So what I did was get the PIN code out, which was unique, and all cards have a PIN code, so I could modify my card, which just had, see what the card had, not this one, this is the hotel's card, but it had an ID. The video store was using as a client ID and had the balance in the card in it. So €5, I don't know how many pesetas it would have been back there, but €5 now, and you would have it here, and you would swipe it, and you would get the €5 worth. And I got the PIN, and I managed to modify. I didn't bring the owner to Irina's estate, but at last I got to see some films for free. This is good, right? How can we prevent it? We need to know how to use the card. We cannot leave information unencrypted. Never, ever, ever. Card's quite safe because it's self-destructive. Old technology, but very safe, but poorly used as the usual. That's what a hacker does. It's not inventing. It's not just, we've found that technology is not properly used, that is not being done right. They encrypt information, and instead of 5 years, you say 05, you kind of have €5 encrypted with a private or public key, so that I don't know. I cannot know that this sequence says €5. That's the conclusion here. You need to use the technology right. I think we have time for one reading. I haven't said it before. This card came in later. I removed every wire and everything, as I said, same as with the car. And at night, had to be done at night, so that was not fun. And the precinct was nearby, so had to be careful. So this card maybe the older people in the room know about it, but know what a PIC is and an EEPROM is? PIC is a programmable microchip, but is inside the card. So you can have this. It's not so trivial. It is an assembler. It is a basic assembler. It's a NIX assembler, 8-bit, very basic, but you can program yourself a code inside the card. So we have time? Oh, no, really, not. So you can program your card, and on the assembler, you can build things. So what did I do? This is my card, the card I have, and you put it into the reader, and it saves the byte sequence sent by the sender. So you have the original card, the other card, and it saves the PIN. And we cannot try it because we don't have time. And you keep it with a card like this. You need no wires or anything of the kind. So a hotel, what else can we do apart from sleeping and breaking into other people's rooms with this kind of cards? Well, we can have fun with industrial control of a hotel. A hotel is quite complicated. There's boilers, fancy boilers actually. Also temperature control or window opening and blind control. So what can we do with it? We have the bus protocol, which is high level, but underneath there is an RS485 communication control. We were talking about a different kind of RS before. Now this is a one. What's interesting about 485? Well, it sends the range is long distance. Here it sends through channel A, that's positive information, and channel B, same information but negative. So it sends 1 positive on channel A and a negative one on channel B. What is it good for? Probably just so that you understand, the idea is to send information for long distances, widely used in areas with high noise, wherever we have lots of interference and we want to make sure that information does not reach destination altered. And here we have a short demo of a module plugged to a fan. So this one with two buttons, and it's Modbus. That's what the language they use to communicate. And in between, everything we've done before is for sniffing. It's not radio frequency sniffing here, but Modbus protocol that we are sniffing. This is serial transmission. How does Modbus work? From one module to the next, communication follows one flow. It's not two ways, but it's only two ways. So it has no RX and TX, only TX. It only sends one way. Reading RX is transmitted when it comes from the previous module. So information travels just one way, not two ways, but one way. We stay in between, or in the middle, and the bad guy here gets all the information sent by the button here. There's a command, so this is it. So recording, reading, this is the Modbus normal protocol. This is the button. So activate the fan. So I stay in between. As if you remember about the car practice from some years back, here is Modbus, but back there it was CAN bus, bus CAN. Just the same. You are in the middle. You listen everything coming from button A. You grab the command you're interested in. You change it and send it through bus again, and you easily cheat any module. So at the hotel, in order to what can we use it for? See how much fun a hotel is if you change the temperatures in the rooms, also lighting, turning off and on the lights. People go crazy. And you have lots of fun for an evening, for example. And you can change anything you want. You can trigger wrong alarms and hidden systems and sensors that are not working. Actually, I was thinking of turning a ventilator and a fan on. You can cheat any device saying that they are overheating, even though it's not true. So several things. Then the travel pass. And I've finished. How does it work? Travel pass work. Same as before. These kind of cards that I have here. These are cards without a chip or anything. They are just RFID. And they have an identifier, same as here is a single one. But the difference is, what's the difference? These ones are protected or secured with self-destruction, but not these, so it's unlimited attempts. As many commands as you want, probably you cannot see that. The memory database, same as here, this is 1024, this one as well. Which you can choose whatever you want, but the memory protection is not limited to any attempt. You can send as many attempts as you want. So what did we need to do with this card in order to modify it? Well, we need to be patient, mainly. Why do we need to be patient? Because algorithm in it is huge. It would take us 10,000 years to mine the code out of the card. There are people who are very smart in this world, or with plenty of time, or, well, with lots of interest, and they've managed to X-ray the card. Some seen the chip inside, it's unprotected. Good manufacturers would protect the chip with kind of a putty so that you cannot X-ray it. And it's interesting. And it is unprotected, and you could see it from the inside. And they found a way to not to send so many attempts, and that way they would get the number So that is the key, the recording key, the writing key out of it. So down from 10,000 years, that is 2 to the power of 14, down to 1 hour. And within an hour, we can change any given card and move around for free, ride in a bus or the metro or anything. It's a pity because, again, we would need an extra hour here and we cannot show it. Vending machine, same as before, same card, but instead of NFC is RFID. Well, the vending machines are not nicely done, manufactured. It's easy to see. Okay, I'm not a fan of vending machines. How does it work? Same as before, but what do? We use a reader, I don't know what it is, but same reading as before, and through brute force, well, we brute force it, and it doesn't take that long. And sorry, we're out of time, but that's what I had to share. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta?
Other questions? No question? So everything is clear then. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Si alguien se quiere acercar,
If you wanna come and touch, it's all here. You can come and touch. That's why I bring it. If something doesn't work, it's just a matter of speaking live.